Okay, so we will start now, and people will join on the way. Good afternoon. I'm Christophe Milin. I work at CINEA. Welcome to this session on technical assistance and one-stop shop. We have three topics to present today. We have the first topic on one-stop shop that I will be presenting. Then my colleague Martin Eibel will present the topic on Renault Pub, and then my colleague Björn Zapfel will present the topic on project development assistance. As for the other sessions, you will have the opportunity to ask questions. There will be a session of question and answer by the end of our session. For that, we will be using Slido. So if you have any question, please connect to the Slido and use the hashtag EULive24. So to find the session, make sure that you find the session 9 on the technical assistance and one-stop shop, and we will receive your questions and ask them by the end of the session. But before we get to that, I warmly welcome our colleague Pierluca Merola from DGNR, who will introduce the session also with a number of contextual elements and policy updates for your interest. So without further ado, I give you the floor, Pierluca.
Thank you very much, Christoph, and thank you very much to all senior colleagues and the overall organization, and in particular to the applicant. This is, I think, the fourth session I'm attending today, so I will present you the policy update and the general policy background. But as I mentioned also in other session, I will try to go a bit fast on the general element. And if you have any question, that probably you are already aware of everything, but if you have any further information, I also invite you to see the recording of the plenary for the overall, let's say, more high-level general background. If we can indeed then start, I will add as a first, let's say, first general contextual topic is that it will be quite dense, as the three topics that are presented today in the call topic on one-stop shop, facilitation instruction for public renovation and technical assistance, and project development assistance, as these are very key area that that basically are delivering the energy transition, the energy efficiency agenda, and the renewable deployment on the ground. So I will go over the different policy background element, and I'll try to be relatively short, but bear with me because indeed it's there, it's quite broad. If we can move then to the next slide to start. Yes, so I will not explain it again. The European Green Deal, the Fit for 55 package, now all the legislative revision are adopted, are part of the EU legal framework, and basically the European member state, in a broader term, the European Union, including its citizens, economic operator, the Commission, the member state, and the different local and regional authorities are charged with their implementation. When it comes to the energy efficiency directive, there has been a strengthening of the overall target, up to 11.7% compared to the baseline of 2020 in final energy saving and primary. And this comes as well with a specific enabling supportive measure, both with regard to assistance to citizens and with regard as well to the enabling financing framework, and what are the best tools to support this objective. If we can move to the next slide, please. When it comes to some of the activities covered by the call topics presented here today, it is very important to mention important obligations that are present in the ED in the Article 5 to 7 when it's come to the exemplary role of the public sector. As you probably know, the public sector has an important role to play in order to drive the market, to activate the investment, and to deliver energy savings in line with the European energy and climate targets. In this regard, there the directive, the ED has been strengthened in terms of the total reduction of final energy consumption by public bodies, as well as it is important to mention the extension of the obligation from the central government buildings to the public bodies, buildings which will need to be identified with. There are a number of exceptions that member state can use, but yes, it will be for member state to identify the overall stock to be renovated, to be taken into account for this obligation. But it is important to mention because indeed one of the topics presented here today goes really on delivering in that in this framework. If we can move to the next slide. Very important as well, is particular when we speak about one-stop shop and integration home renovation services in the way of course, the more impactful and type of instrument. It's important to mention the role that they are called to do by the co-legislator in both the Energy Efficiency Directive and Energy Performance of Building Directive. It is also for me the occasion here in recalling the interinstitutional negotiation in the past years, how this topic in the different in the trilogues between the European Parliament, the representative, and the government of the member state, how the topic of exactly of one-stop shop and assistance to citizens in achieving, let's say, the European climate and energy targets when it's come exactly to buildings, to home renovation, to really action that are taken by the overall by citizen, by the overall population, their importance to support, and their importance that should be highlighted as well at the level of the EU legislation. Here, I wanted just to mention that indeed there is a call to deploy one-stop shop services and to member state to roll them out, and this is very much in line with the support that we provide as one of the 3 topics treated in this session. If we can move to the next slide, I will pass to, I think it's important to recall it here, but I will do it very briefly because it touches across the different call topics potentially, is of course the role of the ESCO market, of energy service company, and in particular energy performance contracting, in particular when it comes to the public sector intervention, to the intervention on the renovation of public buildings. This is as well one of the articles that was strengthened in the Energy Efficiency Directive recast, in particular when it's come to increase the uptake and in the public sector, and also to develop the correct supportive tools such as the model contract and the monitoring and verification mechanism. If we can move to the next slide, I will conclude on the idea by speaking about financing, define the overall energy efficiency financing article. And in particular, I will recall that we divided a bit this article on 4 macro areas. On one side, the part on the efficient use of, let's say, of public resources in order to support with technical assistance and access to finance the delivery of the investment need in order to close the financing gap on the ground to achieve our target. The area more related to the private financing and innovative financing element that some of you that attended the session on innovative financing might have heard from our colleague Carlos. And then, of course, the area more related to the cooperation with financial institution and a fourth one that is of less interest here because it's about the reporting requirement by the central government authority, of course. When it comes to the support, it's clear that it's clear since so many years that one of the key barrier on when it comes to energy efficiency investment is at the level of the development of the project itself and of the overall project pipeline. And in this regard, what the article called, it's called actually it put an obligation on the European Commission to provide technical assistance support and to support member states in establishing the technical assistance facilities. So this is also the topic on project development assistance specifically here, beside being one of the flagship topic of the overall Life Setsu program, is as well a reply to this obligation, because it's clear that when we speak about this small scale investment, sometimes the major barrier are at the level of the development of the project, of developing the financial structure, the technical work, etc. So this is also to recall and make the link with the PTA topic. If we can move to the next slide. Here I wanted to present also the energy performance of building directive and the revision. I spoke about that in the previous session, but I think here is maybe more important to recall a bit the overall background and reason why we intervene here. There is a need to intervene on buildings. In buildings is where there is the majority of energy consumption taking place, and as well where, in particular, where there is the larger saving potential. The revision of the UPBD, which for your information was adopted last week, a bit more, 2 weeks ago on the 12th, provide a bit two different perspectives. A more long-term perspective for, let's say, the new building stock, the new buildings and the building stock we would like to have by 2050, with the introduction, for instance, of the zero emission building criteria for new building. And on the other side, a more short to medium term contribution toward the 2030 target, but also beyond that, in scaling up the renovation rates across Europe. If you can move to the next slide, please. Indeed, we can move ahead, but here we have additional element. Okay. The directive intervene, as I was saying, also on a number of, also for completeness, on a number also of supportive tool in terms of, for instance, the strengthening of the energy performance certificate, the introduction of renovation passport, as well as all the interlinkages with energy system integration, and also smart, also when it comes to sustainable mobility in terms of deployment of electric vehicle charge point and indoor air quality. But indeed, maybe the two main element is on the supporting the deployment of renovation, activating the demand for renovation, and on the long-term decarbonization. If we can move to the next slide. Maybe we can move, because I understand that the image appear one after the other. Yes, perfect, thank you. So the key novelty, I would say, of the energy performance of building directive is the introduction of some legal requirement, some legal tool to activate indeed to activate the demand for renovation. There is an important differentiation, of course, in the legal text between non-residential building stock and residential building stock. When it comes to the non-residential part, the EU level Act established the introduced minimum energy performance standards, which are set at different threshold in terms of the overall performance of the building stock, and entail an obligation to renovate the lowest performing part of the building stock. On the residential part, of course, there is the need to that was recognized by the co-legislator throughout the negotiation and the final act, to leave indeed important degree of flexibility to member states in setting up their national trajectories. So member state will, in the transposition, establish their specific national trajectory for the residential building stock, while within this, it's important, however, to recall that the overall principle of addressing firstly and foremost the worst performing building, because these are the one where there is the largest potential, because these are the one where the impact on the negative impact on low-income households and citizens is larger when it's come to discomfort, is indeed enshrined in the legislation. And in particular, member state the legislation foresee that at least 55% of saving in this national trajectory that have been agreed will need to come from the worst performing part of the building stock, identified as the 43% of the overall national stock. So this, if we can move to the next slide, clearly call for an important element that indeed I was almost forgetting, but it comes in specifically in this regard, is that as part of the overall Repower EU revision of this Commission proposal, because as you know, with the Repower EU plan, the ED, the Renewable Energy Directive, and the Energy Performance of Building Directive were revised while already under negotiation. It was the introduction of the solar energy, the article reflecting focusing on solar energy in building, where there are some requirement to phased in requirement, because they will kick off at different stage, to enable the deployment of solar PVs in new building to start, and then also in existing public and non-residential building. If we can move to the next slide. I will indeed also recall the provision under the PVD when it comes to one-stop shop and financing. Here, what is particularly important to mention is the focus that is given on the assistance part to meet this requirement, because of course on one side the regulatory requirement need to be met by supportive framework, and one of the requirement that is also reflected, is reflected in both the EDA PVD, is indeed the requirement to establish dedicated one-stop shop to support the energy performance of buildings. If we can go to the next slide. I wanted to conclude here a bit with more important overall financing consideration when it comes to the current challenge when we speak about the energy efficiency investment and building renovation investment in particular. The current level of the gap compared to the resource available is around, we estimate that around the public resources will be able to cover between 10, 20, 15 probably % of the overall investment need. This means that these public resources need to be used in the most cost efficient way to enable, simplify, improve access to finance in order to attract the private financing capital, also with innovative and long-term financial solution, basically. I wanted to recall this because, of course, one-stop shop and the overall topic that we are discussing here are exactly that instrument that improve and support and need to simplify the overall access to finance and the development of private financing. If we can, and the attraction, sorry, of private financing. If we can move to the next slide, and here we can conclude. Here we indeed recall this overall estimate and the aspect that leveraging private financing and investment is conditional, of course, to the achievement of this target. But also I wanted to recall the different driver that we consider, and how the combination of grants and financial instrument with technical assistance support is one of the key element. So how as well this type of topics or the type of project that you will put forward will be able also to then develop a sound pipeline to attract as well further financial support. But let me also briefly mention here that yes, I mean, we said it over and over, but the role that the one-stop shop plays, not only to supporting citizen and to support the achievement of this target, but also to develop that I would say tailored financial support and closer to what are the need that they experience in the different territory that they cover, and in close contact with the possible partners and financial institution, because there is a general recognition that solution must be tailored to the current market of the ground and the current let's say practices. With this, I think, if I'm not wrong, my presentation is over. Maybe we can move to the, yes, indeed. And thank you, Christoph, and all the colleagues. And I remain here in the room. And sorry if, in case I take too much time. Thank you.
It's perfectly fine. Thank you very much for this presentation, and then for your effort over the day, because it was not the first presentation, but probably the best. You gave a very good policy landscape overview of what is ongoing, and the target, I think, I quite clear. The legal setting is quite clear and comprehensive. There will obviously be an effort now to transpose the directive into national legislation, but apart from that, in this legal framework, also a lot of work now to concretely deliver on these ambitious objectives. And so that's what we will present now, 3 topics that may help you deliver on this objective. Before I start with the first of these topics, the one on one-stop shops, I just would like to remind you that if you want to ask questions, you have to use Slido. There is a session open with the hashtag EULive24. I think it was not open at the very beginning of the session, but now it's open. So if you have any question while we speak, feel free to connect and ask your questions there. I don't see any question for the time being. I'm afraid there is no premium for the first to ask question, but maybe that's still an achievement you can be proud of at dinner tonight. So feel free to join and ask your questions there, and I will continue then with my presentation on one-stop shop. If I can see the slide. The next slide, please. So again, I'm Christophe Milin presenting this. We had the presentation of the policy framework, but this very large ambition in the residential sector are faced with the practical reality of home renovation, the difficulties faced by most homeowners. If you take the residential building stock, most of the stock is owned by private individual, people like you and me, that are not necessarily specialists in energy efficiency or in building renovation, and for the time being are quite lost with what they have to do and how to proceed with energy renovation in their house. There is at the moment a lack of demand still for home renovation, so many people are interested in getting into energy efficiency in their home, especially given the current circumstances and recent events. But most people are still a little bit lost on how to proceed and how to conduct their renovation. To push demand, there is obviously a possibility to incentivize demand with subsidies, with information, and so on. At some point also, there may be a constraint on demand and requirement for the worst performing buildings to renovate. But in any case, there is a need to facilitate this renovation process. It's not reasonable to expect that homeowners, people like you and me, will build capacity. You have most people will have one home. Maybe they will do one renovation in their life, and it's not reasonable to expect them to become energy efficiency experts for this one renovation they have to do. It's not reasonable. It's not even needed, because there are already a lot of market participants that do provide some of the services needed for this energy renovation. If I go on the next slide, we can establish a number on the next slide. We can establish a number of steps, let's say, you have to go through when dealing with a renovation, a number of or types of participants in the market that are already providing some answers to these different needs, and you see that most of the needs are covered, but there is an absence of coordination. And if you go on the next slide, a complexity faced by most homeowners. You have to go through the maze of energy innovation, which is complicated. So the point of this topic on One Stop Shop is to start from the homeowner's point of view, so to take their position and understand what would be their needs and how you can answer to these needs. The point would be to take on tasks for which these homeowners are not well equipped and will not build capacity, and provide a comprehensive answer, coordinated, combining, integrated the different services that exist, or creating the services that are needed, and make it in an offer that is comprehensible and that homeowners can activate. We require in this topic that the services are implemented during the project. So by the end of the project, it should be crystal clear that the services are in place and in capacity to deliver to homeowners. And in order to prove that, we also ask the services to be tested. So a number of investments already launched before the end of the action, so as to provide a proof of concept, let's say. If your solution is relevant, then there should be an interest from homeowners and first operation ongoing before the end of the action. We also ask you to look at your medium to long-term viability, so to foresee your action in the long run. You will receive a support from the EU grant at the beginning to put the services in place. But what we want to see is that after the project is over, the services continue to be delivered. We don't want the services to stop as soon as EU grant stop. So we want also to clearly see in your action initiative to secure your medium to long-term viability. On the next slide, getting a little bit more into the details of the services that are needed for homeowners, we could distinguish three different models. A model which is most focused on the upstream part of the journey, which is quite commonly delivered now, providing information and general recommendation to homeowners on what they should do, but leaving them with most of the decisions to make afterwards. A support model, which is a little bit like an extended architect's mandate and cover all the parts of the journey. In particular, covers the project design, the selection of companies, and the establishment of financing plan. And even one step further, a model that is combining the design and the renovation work. So typically what a general contractor could do, proposing a design and also proposing to deliver some of the work. What we observe is that to upscale renovation, and especially to upscale low energy renovation, proactive support is really indispensable. Just providing generic advice and then leaving homeowners all the decisions and actions to do is just not getting us to the level of activities that we require if we have to fulfill our objectives. So in the past, we have covered all three models. In 2024, we would very much like to see proposal focusing more on proactive support, so getting towards the support and implementation models, and the proposals that would be limited just to generic information and diagnosis will not be in the scope of this topic this year. So it's not enough at this stage. We had supported some projects like this in the past, but now we really want to see initiative going further and delivering also support in all the steps of the customer journey. Also to mention that online platform, so internet platform without direct connection, direct physical interaction with the homeowners would not be enough also, and not in the scope of this topic. So we really want to go further and provide proactive support, face-to-face support also at some stage to really support homeowners all the way through their customer journey. On the next slide, please. So this is nice to say, but concretely difficult to deliver. Huh? It's easy to deliver on paper, but concretely putting together the different entities that are able to deliver the services is a complex matter. When I say that you should cover most of the all of the customer journey and provide solution to homeowners at each step of their journey, that doesn't mean that the entities that you're setting up is to deliver all of this by on its own. It's a matter of harmonizing the offer, on creating partnerships, creating connections between the different entities that can deliver the services. It can be done in different ways. You have to find your relevant ways depending on who you have as local actors and what they are willing to do and how far they want to go. So it's a matter of coordinating people, getting them together, and to coordinate the service offer to homeowners. This can be done partly as a not-for-profit. For instance, the very early stages of information to citizens is hardly a business case, and maybe there is this part of the services may be delivered as a non-for-profit, I mean subsidized in that case, but there are also a number of services that could be established as a for-profit basis, also in a view to secure your long-term viability. What is important so is to make an offer that makes sense in your local environment. And in that way, this topic is a little bit different than other topics in this live CET call, because you have the possibility to propose, to make a proposal that is fully local, so that is conducted by entities that are only from the same member state. You don't have a requirement of having several entities from several member states, and you can definitely work at local level. Also meaning that you could work in local language. So most of the activities, and especially when you're addressing homeowners in your territory, could be conducted in local language. On the next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. What is important? So it's easy to deliver on paper. What is particularly difficult is to deliver in reality. And as a way to understand where you stand and how relevant your proposal is, we want to see how well you've identified your local environment, the needs of the stakeholders you're targeting in this environment, and to which extent the answers that you are proposing are relevant to these needs. So we want to see a clear diagnosis of the initial situations. What is the target population that what is the population that you're targeting, the current practices, who are the key stakeholders where you propose to operate, and so on. And also we want to see that there is already some level of endorsement to the proposal itself. So either by involving key stakeholders in the consortium already and being committed to deliver some of the services, but also some sort of support to the proposal from stakeholders that are not yet in the action. So you could, for instance, deliver some letters of support to show that your proposal is particularly relevant in its local environment. Then during the action, if your proposal is selected, we also want to see a number of points on how to mobilize stakeholders and how to possibly involve them in your action at a later stage when it is a project, for instance, through an external advisory board and other ways that you could imagine to involve all stakeholders in your local environment. On the next slide, please. We want you to deliver methods and support to homeowners, to build expertise and organizational innovations, to put people together and create working methods that are relevant, coherent, and deliver to homeowners. Also as a way to ensure cost effectiveness and price transparencies of the services provided to homeowners. And one key element of this topic is how you establish trust. So how you make sure that homeowners believe in the offer that you're making and are confident enough to engage in complex matters with rather substantial investment to be made. And this trust could be secured, for instance, through clear liability. Who is responsible at every step of the journey? What happens if anything goes wrong? Who is responsible to fix the problem if anything goes wrong, and so on. So this is particularly important in this topic. On the next slide, please. It's important to deliver at local level. We want to see especially that, but it should be absolutely clear that by the end of the action, your services that are up and running in the local environment and delivering first operations. But we also want you to spread your experience and help others also develop their own experiments. So that could be made, for instance, by improving legal and regulatory environment. If you face difficulties of a legal nature, then identifying these difficulties and working towards legal or regulatory improvement is very welcome. We also want to see some high degree of replicability of your initiatives and some communication to help your initiative being replicated. There is a very particular project in our portfolio of project in LifeSet, which is called EU Peers, which is creating a community of practitioners for this kind of integrated home renovation services. And also in your proposal and then in your activities, you should clearly foresee to be in touch with them, to be working with them and contributing to this emerging community of practice. On the next slide, so just to mention that there are two scopes mentioned in the topic. One on private non-professional homeowners, so the non-specialists like you and me. And as I said, you should really develop a service that covers all steps in the journey, notably the step on selection of professionals and work monitoring of work, quality assurance, structuring, and provision of finance. There is a second scope that I'm not going to develop much, but on the next slide, also for the very particular segment of professional homeowners. On the next slide, please. So you could imagine some tailored ways also to address these private professional entities. I mean, the actions that you would conduct for these large building owners would probably be very different than when you address private individuals. So for this rental housing and large landlords, you could develop also specific approaches, more with different messages and triggers that are probably different than from individuals. Maybe working more on a portfolio management perspective and valuation of assets, developing strategic partnerships with construction company, with financial actors, and so on. And developing some financial engineering could be also considered, having a particular attention to governance issues. So this is a different scope that is yeah, so you have two different scopes, and also we ask you in your proposal to be clear on which of the scopes you are targeting. Yeah, don't imagine that because you're targeting very broadly your residential sector, you would get more a better assessment, let's say. It's much better to be clearly focusing on very specific aspect of the residential sector and be delivering concrete and efficient measures to this particular segment. On the next slide, just to mention that we have been supporting already a number of projects, almost a little bit more than 40 projects are ongoing or completed, and we are covering quite a large share already of the EU. I'm not going into the details of this project, but you can look in Cordis and have a look at what is being done already in other projects, and probably get also some inspiration for your own proposal. On the next slide, I want to mention again this project on EU peers, the idea to develop a community of practitioners. You could probably also get very relevant information and inspiration for your own initiatives from this platform. So they are setting up, they started at the end of last year. The website, I think, is up and running already, and you could find relevant information, relevant experiences, and source of inspiration for your own initiative when developing your proposal. And during your project, if you were to be selected, then we really ask you to consider collaborating with this platform, so to gain some collective intelligence also, and maybe move faster on a number of aspects that were already tackled by others in maybe in your country already or in other member states. And the next slide, I think it's so it's the end for my presentation. Obviously, I'm open for questions through Slido, and also you have here a number of ways to contact us at CINEA if you have any questions. And then we pass the floor to Martin Eibel, who will talk more on public buildings and the RenoPub topic.
Thank you very much, Christoph. As you said, I mean, if you have any questions now on the presentations, please use the hashtag EULive24 to put your questions into Slido, and then we will address them on all the topic presentations now at the end of this session. So I also welcome you to this session. My specific presentation is on the topic of facilitation structures for the renovation of public buildings. That is a topic which is really dedicated to supporting the renovation wave in the public buildings. On the next slide, please, I will show you very briefly the policy drivers, but Pierluca has already extensively touched on those, but just very briefly, you know, we want to double the renovation rate of buildings, of all buildings, through the European Green Deal's renovation wave. And of course, in the recasted Energy Efficiency Directive, the public sector now has got a larger role to contribute towards the energy efficiency goals in Articles 5 and 6. So now the renovation target applies really to all public bodies at national, regional, and local level. And that's why we also came up with this topic to actually support local authorities in their endeavor to renovate their public buildings. On the next slide, we see the challenges, because what is needed is that we need facilitation structures, long-term structures that are not just popping up and are around for 1-2 years, but we need people who want to set up structures for long-term, that are sustainable, that are financially sustainable, and that can reach out to the public authorities, the local authorities in their territory, and help them with the renovation of public buildings. Because many local authorities do not have the capacity at all. They may not even have a dedicated officer who can actually kick off renovation projects. And often they have local authority officers that have a lot on their plate, not only energy renovation, but a lot of other things. So it's really necessary to come up with umbrella structures that are actually helping local authorities to get the job done. And of course, what we also want, we want to be in line with the new EU energy policy legislation now. So we are not just looking at any kind of renovations, but with this funding topic, we really want to support all the way. So we want to support energy renovations of public buildings that are going towards nearly zero energy buildings and zero emission building standards. So that's also very important. And of course, it was mentioned also graphically by Pierluca that there is some public funding available, cohesion funds, structural funds, RFF, and so on and so forth. But a main chunk has to come from the private market to actually support us in delivering the clean energy transition. So therefore, what is also a challenge is to have these structures, or to have structures that are actually also supporting the deployment of financial and market-based instruments to get the renovation wave in the public sector done. Next slide, please. So I show you a little bit what kind of proposals we are looking for now. So first of all, we are looking at proposals that are establishing and operating facilitation structures at scale. So the scale is important. That means we are really looking at national, regional facilitation structures. If you have just 5 local authorities at your hand, this topic is not for you. We really look at scale. It's very, very important. When you describe in your proposal also how the governance is set, the mandate, the geographical coverage, and the sustainability of this facilitation structure. So it's very important to understand that you have the buy-in from your stakeholders, that you have got the mandate, that you have a clear geographical coverage, which is actually compatible with the scale we're looking for, and that you also build into your proposal sustainability measures. So how are you going to sustain your facilitation structure? The facilitation structure should really handhold public authorities in a way, because as I said, capacity is very, very limited. So it should be an all-inclusive service. It should be really helping them to identify the buildings, to identify the detailed measures that should be put in place to help with the procurement process, to help them to supervise the contractors, and so on and so forth. And finally, again, the reminder, when the facilitation structure is getting active to support public authorities, the retrofitting should be to NZEP or ZEP standards. Next slide, please. You should also describe in your proposal how you will actually get this long-term sustainability in terms of stakeholder support, and what kind of business models are you proposing to sustain this facilitation strucures. So write in your proposal also how you're going to mobilize and work with local authorities, and that you work only with local authorities that are really wanting to renovate their public buildings to NZEP and ZEP standards. So demonstrate the buy-in in your proposal from the local authorities. That's very, very important that we can see that. It does not mean that all the local authorities have to be partners in or beneficiaries in the proposal, of course, but there are other means like letters of support and a good description from your target group that they are supporting your facilitation structure. And then also the integration of the financial engineering is important. So the facilitation structure should you really look at how financial instruments, existing financial instruments in your country can be used. What kind of market-based instruments are there in the market that can be used for the renovation of public buildings? So in order to really increase the private part of the financing in the renovation works. And of course, I mean, that doesn't exclude that you can't, that it doesn't exclude the use of EU funds, but as it was clearly stipulated, we really want to see that you make an effort to leverage in private finance here also in the work of the public buildings renovation. Next slide, please. And what is also important here is the aggregation of a building and renovation project. So we are not only looking at a facilitation structure at scale, so national, regional level, but of course, we also want to accelerate the renovation wave in the public sector. So that means we want to do more buildings and we want to do them faster. So we want to have basically aggregation of the projects, and we want the facilitation structures also to look into how to structure the procurement process in order to get the work faster done, because that's very often still a bottleneck that, especially in the public sector, as you know, the procurement process can take very long. And so the facilitation structure should also look at national legislation, should look at good practices on how to make these procurement processes more efficient. It's very important that you look at the full topic description on the funding and tender opportunities portal. So what I told you now is really more a snapshot and the kind of key elements which we really want to see in the proposal. So these elements you really have to work out in detail in the proposal in order to convince our expert evaluators that it's that your proposal is worth being supported. Next slide, please. There are already some projects ongoing. We had a call in the last couple of years, and from the live 2022 call, we already have 5 projects that are ongoing. So you can find them here under the link at the bottom, and they are located in Croatia, Ireland, Italy, France, and Czechia. So for inspiration, have a look at those and see what they're going to do. Next slide. Also, please look at the other over 150 ELENA and PDA projects. So basically, there's a European Investment Bank who's supporting renovation projects through the ELENA instrument. And of course, we also have under previously Horizon 2020, but also now in live CET, the Project Development Assistance Facility, which is also supporting a lot of projects in this area. And there's definitely always a good lesson learned from those projects when they go through the process. My colleague Björn Zapfel will talk a bit more in detail on the PDA topic in a few minutes. So what is also important here for this RenoPub facilitation structure topic, that you can also apply as a single applicant or as a group of applicants from a single eligible country. We acknowledge that this is something which has to be set in the national context somehow to really bring together all the synergies and to make it work. So we allow really applications from one country in order to get facilitation structures and applicants that are really focusing on the establishment of these structures in their own country. In terms of project size, I mean, we are looking at a contribution. We like to contribute to the project between 1 and 1.5 million, but it's indicative, so it doesn't exclude any other amount. Next slide. And in terms of expected impacts, which you of course also have to clearly stipulate in your proposal, you have to clearly write them out in your proposal. So you have to clearly show and demonstrate in your work plan, for example, in your objectives of the proposal, that you will set up such structures that are tested, implemented, and operational at the end of the action. So that means that they are already delivering renovation projects to NZEP and SEP standards. It's not sufficient to set up the renovation structure as a facilitation structure at the end of the project. We want you to set it up at the beginning of the project so that you can actually test, implement, and operationalize your activities of the facilitation structure. So please bear that in mind, because if you only do that and formalize it at the end of the project, that's not good enough for us. And then you have also to quantify in your proposal the indicators here, which you see, especially how many public buildings are you going to target and renovate to NZEP and SEP? How many public authorities are you going to support through your services? What kind of energy savings are you looking at? I mean, that should be also in the context, of course, of the NZEP and SEP targets. And we want also to understand how much of additional funding support, so from private sources or EU funding, you're also leveraging into your region or at a national level, thanks to your operations. And of course, the standard clean energy transition indicators, which you can see on the right hand side column. Next slide. If you want to have more information, as I said, you find here the link to the funding topic, RenoPub, which with a detailed topic description. You can have also look at there at the application form template, all the templates for the proposal and the call document. And then there will be also, after this info day, we will also publish then the recordings and presentations from this info day, so that you can actually look at it at your own time. And again, here also the link to the ongoing RenoPub topics, projects. So please also have a look at those. Next slide. I think that's all from my side, and I pass on the floor to Christoph.
Thank you very much, Martin. And I pass the floor directly to Björn Zeffel for the last presentation on PDA, Project Development Assistance.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christoph. Last but not least, we are now talking about the third topic today, which is project development assistance. And actually, I think it's worth mentioning that this topic has quite a long tradition and quite a long history behind it. Project development assistance, or PDA, as you will often hear, has been provided not only under the current Life Energy Program, but also under the preceding, for instance, Horizon 2020 and also the Intelligent Energy Europe programs, which means, in fact, that there is quite some practical experience and know-how, not only how to develop these kinds of proposals, but also on concrete experiences on the ground and also the challenges with setting up these kinds of projects. Next slide, please. This topic is quite specific, and you will see here a few words on that. It has quite a number of specific features, which I try to extract a little bit during the next few minutes. The topic as such is and was already for quite some years considered key to facilitate really the setup of quite ambitious sustainable energy investment pipelines all across Europe at scale, as basis also of the fulfillment of the objectives of the European Green Deal, for which this is also key. In this context, it provides, and we will get a little bit more in detail later on, but in principle, it provides technical assistance for various project promoters to bridge the gap between, on the one hand, the basic project idea, and on the other hand, the actual launch of the related investments on the ground, both in financial and in also technological terms, or in other words, it provides technical assistance to convert theory on the one hand into reality on the ground. Next slide, please. In this sense, the PDA pursues, of course, a number of quite specific and dedicated objectives, which are briefly summarized as a kickoff, if you want, on this slide. The basic goal, as I have already mentioned at the beginning, is twofold. First of all, PDA intends to support the development and, on the other hand, also the actual launch of highly ambitious project pipelines of sustainable energy investments. And here we understand energy efficiency and renewable energy investments. But the launch of these investments should be getting to a level where the single projects in the project pipeline get ready to finance, or in other words, bankable or investable for various investors, especially such from the private sector side, already during the project duration. And this is a very important issue and point to keep in mind. With this basic intention, projects are supported under the PDA topic, which include a number of innovative aspects regarding either their financial and, or on the other hand, their organizational approach. And I will get, because this is so key, a little bit more in detail later on during the presentation. Here, just a few words in this context. It means that PDA projects should, on the one hand, put an emphasis on the mobilization of private finance, because this is key, again, to also fulfill the financial needs in the context of the 2030 energy and climate targets of the European Union. But this could, of course, also include customized or bespoke blending also with public sources. And PDA projects in this context also would need to put an emphasis on the related setup of long-term and scalable financial instruments. On the other hand, organization-wise, a focus lies on the removal of various legal and structural barriers for these kinds of pipelines and projects, which are still existing on the market, and also the target-oriented structuring of these investments and the projects in the pipeline, which could also include the pooling and bundling of these projects to reach a critical investment size, and also a structure which makes these projects and these investments interesting for especially the private finance market. Overall, important to keep in mind is that PDA intends to build the technical, the economic, and also the legal expertise, which is important and necessary for both project development and project implementation on the ground. And also on this basis, a particular intention is to ensure, of course, a high replicability of the approach beyond the project context all across Europe or even beyond. Next slide, please. Here I will be very short, but just to show you a slide that proposals can be submitted by a variety of public and private project promoters, ranging from public authorities via ESCOs and up to industry, various industry and service organizations, especially in the private sector. So there you can have a large degree of creativity in this context. Next slide, please. As mentioned, and here a few more details on the actual scope of the topic, because for you as potential applicants, this is of course extremely important. Regarding the scope, as mentioned, the PDA topic focuses on the one hand on the preparation, but also on the other hand on the actual launch of investment pipelines of sustainable energy investments, while removing existing barriers inter alia by either on the one hand, organizational innovation, and or on the other hand, adequate financial engineering. Next slide. What does that mean in more detail? In this context, and also as I've mentioned, with a view also to really delivering replicable solutions to accelerate sustainable energy investments all across Europe, proposals, and this is important to keep in mind, demonstrate a kind of showcase dimension in the proposal documents in at least one of the following two respects. Proposals either have to incorporate an aspect of, we call it organizational innovation in the actual mobilization of the investment program, which could, and here the topic text is gives some examples without being exhaustive, which could include, for instance, the setup of dedicated project development units, which are streamlining project development, maybe as a kind of a one-stop shop, both in organizational and in financial respects. It could include the establishment of efficient public procurement procedures, for instance, and as I've mentioned, also various bundling and pooling approaches at scale to really, at large scale, create investment pipelines of a structure which make them interesting for investors, especially on the private sector side. Next, please. On the other hand, target-oriented financial engineering approaches could and should play a prominent role in this context, which would, as such approaches, focus on enhanced levels of private investments. Again, public sources alone will not be enough with regard to the targets which are pursued in the context of the European Green Deal, for instance, and especially the 2030 targets. And also in this context, many of those proposals would then also focus on an improved combination with existing funds in this context. So blending plays a role in this context. The topic text again lists a few examples in this context without being exhaustive, but just to give you a bit of an idea, mentioned is, for instance, energy performance contracting, blended funds, innovative on-bill or on-tax payment schemes, and also community-based financing schemes. And it is quite interesting if you refer back to what has been selected in the past under the topic of project development assistance, you will see that in principle, all of these topics that you see on the slide have been taken up by funded projects and therefore also implemented on the ground. So therefore, there exists quite some experience which is worth drawing on when you consider developing new proposals. Next, please. Overall, proposals should demonstrate, of course, in the context of the European Green Deal, a high ambition regarding energy savings and decarbonization. So there is a certain focus on energy efficiency and energy savings in this context. And again, the topic text, without being exhaustive, mentions a few possible approaches, reaching from deep renovation up to highly energy efficient infrastructure in this context. Next, please. To give you an idea, the slide also shows that a variety of target sectors is possible, is thinkable in this context, ranging from existing residential and non-residential buildings via the decarbonization and modernization of existing heating and cooling networks. Mentioned is also existing public infrastructure in areas like water or public lighting. Mentioned and possible are, for instance, also measures regarding enhanced energy efficiency of industry and services, especially in the private sector, renewable energy production by especially energy communities and other citizen-led initiatives, and last but not least, also the mobility sector is mentioned as a potential target sector. Next, please. I would like to highlight the importance of this slide because it summarizes, I think, specifically for potential proposers, these specific features which should be kept in mind when you think about delivering a new proposal under this topic this year. As I've mentioned before, PDA focuses on tangible investments, and these have to be launched, very importantly, together with a scalable financing solution before the end of the action. And this has to be evidenced. It has to be shown in a traceable way, also in the proposal documents, especially, for instance, in the form of signed work or investment contracts. What is also required in this context is, as we call, a certain leverage effect, which means in general terms, PDA projects and proposals have to demonstrate that €1 of EU support triggers at least 15 euros of actual investments, as I have said, before the end of the project duration. There is only one exception for exclusive investments in residential buildings. In this case, the leverage is reduced to 1 to 10. Important since specifically also in this topic, there is not an interest in theoretical exercises, but PDA projects are really intended to make a difference on the ground. Important is that they contribute to increased skills and capacity to further also deliver future sustainable energy investments on the ground across Europe and even beyond. Also quite specific also in this topic is, like was mentioned also in some others before me, that proposals by single applicants or also applicants from a single eligible country are possible for the PDA topic. And here, just to give you a bit of an example and a bit of an idea, the expected project size for this kind of projects is between around 1 and 1.5 million euros. Next, please. I will not go in detail here because I think during the other sessions you have heard a lot that, of course, as the PDA topic is very practical, it is important that it also demonstrates the expected impacts of its results and quantify it for the period of time at the end of the project, but also for the period of time 5 years after the project end. And this has to be done in a well-substantiated, reasonable and traceable way, or in other words, the experts looking at your proposals have to be convinced that the impacts that you are expecting are really realistic to be achieved during the project duration. Next, please. There is a differentiation between indicators which are common for the whole life set program. You can see them in dark blue on the slide. This is also the same like for all the other proposals we are talking about today. Then there are a number of topic-specific indicators in addition, for instance, to the leverage effect, which was mentioned. They are mentioned and shown here in green on the slide, like the number of staff of project promoters with increased skills or the organizations with increased capacity, or also the jobs created directly or indirectly through the project. And of course, if you have specific impacts that you are foreseeing, specify them in the form of activity-specific indicators. Next, please. Now, as I've mentioned, PDA has a long history, and this means also quite some experience on the ground, and therefore it is also possible out of these experiences to extract a number of success factors which are worth drawing on when you think about developing new proposals. This includes, I will not go here in detail because we are running a little bit out of time. It includes clarity, I would say, clarity regarding the starting point. So what do you really want to achieve, which includes, the clear identification of the targeted investments and the market barriers and needs that you want to tackle, a clarity of the concept. So how do you want to achieve those objectives regarding really the financial approach, the single investment steps and or the related public procurement process. There should be an emphasis on the impacts. They should be traceable, clearly quantified and qualified. And also there should be a clear focus on the actual monitoring and reporting of this impact. And last but not least, projects can only be successful if the engagement of the key stakeholders is actually proven and ensured during the whole project duration or even beyond. Next, please. Actually, also in the context of the PDA topic, there is, of course, a wealth of practical experience. I've mentioned it a few times, which has been generated on the ground out of the projects which have been implemented during the last few years. And again, also as Martin and also Christoph before have mentioned, we encourage you, of course, to have a look at these projects because they are very good food for thought on the basis of practical experience, also with challenges. The next two slides, and I think I don't have time to really go in detail here, but you know, as the presentation will be online, you are really also invited to have a closer look on these projects. There are two projects, one coming out of the Horizon 22 world. It was on the previous slide called PEDIA. And there is another project which is called COHEAT 2, which is a live PDA project. And on this slide, you can see links to examples of all previous PDA projects. And you can find this information either on Cordis and via Cordis or on the EU funding and tenders portal through the links shown on the slide. Yes, I will stop here. Thank you very much. And we are now available for any questions, either now in the session or also later on via email. Thanks a lot and good luck with your proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Björn. Thank you to all speakers. As you mentioned, Björn, there is still a few minutes left in these sessions for question and answer. Again, if you have a burning question, then please go to Slido and ask through Slido for ask your question there. There are a number of questions already that we've received. Some of them we will answer directly in Slido, and I will and also some that we may not be able to answer now. We will answer later on in FAQs or directly. But for the question I will ask now, I will take the opportunity of having Pierluca here. A question on the national ELENA. Do we have any news for the development of national ELENA, which was seen in a presentation from EIB?
Yes, thank you very much, Christoph, and to Kirsi Maria for her question. Yes, the national ELENA, the national ELENA, so-called national ELENAs, indeed is a service that through the ELENA facility, the Commission have requested the EIB ELENA team to provide for the establishment of national or regional in those member states that have a regional let's say institutional setup to provide indeed the support in that regard. I would invite you, I mean, for further information, we can indeed, you can write to us in DGN or directly to the ELENA team, but indeed there are already ongoing with discussion and already some projects started in this regard with some member states. So this is an ongoing type of support there.
Okay,
just clarify a little.
Thank you very much. I will take the other question on OSS. Are we expected to reach an economically viable business model before the end of the project? So you should already from the beginning target some kind of economic viability, depending obviously on the type of services that you put in place. These may or may not be easy to achieve, maybe most likely difficult to achieve, but this is really a matter also of having a mindset to continue your activities even after the project is over. So from the very beginning, you should foresee ways to continue your operation after the project ends. That could also mean for some of the services, for instance, to look for additional subsidies or additional source of public funding. But definitely, we would like to see from the very beginning that you establish your initiative in the long run and you don't close a shop just after the project is over.
Can I, Christoph, can I also just say that this, but exactly what you said applies to Renopap as well. So
exactly, and probably to PDA too.
Exactly. So, I mean, please, also for Renopub, I mean, we want to see that you're working on the business model within the project duration and that you actually come up with a viable business model before the end of the project.
There is a question on PDA. When you say renewable energy production, is this only eligible from energy communities or citizen-led initiative, or can other applicants apply?
Well,
That would be
very
for
quick,
you.
because we are very much at the end. I think indeed, PDA projects can, of course, always include an aspect of renewable energy production. If, for instance, a main focus is on building renovations. But indeed, the topic description mentions as dedicated target sector concerning renewable energy production, those by energy communities or other citizen-led initiatives. That's true.
Okay, thank you very much, Bjorn. I think the last question will be for you, Martin, on Renopub. Is there here too a leverage factor to be achieved as in PDA?
No, there is not, because in Renopub we are focusing on setting up the structures, on working together with the stakeholders, looking at the mandate, at the at the service development. So, like in OSS, we are also focusing here on the service packages development that will be given to local authorities in the renovation of public buildings. So therefore, there is no leverage factor here in Renopub.
Okay. Thank you very much. That will end our session for today. Thank you very much to the participants. Thank you very much to my colleagues and panelists. I hope we've answered your question, concerns, that we raised some interest for you to develop your proposal. We're looking forward to receiving them in September now. So good luck with that. Good luck with setting up your consortium. Feel free to contact us if you have any other questions, if you need some more information, understanding on the topics. Feel free to contact us, and we're looking forward to reading you in September. Have a nice day.